Do you ever feel like you just don't have the time to sit down and read the news every morning? Sometimes things get so hectic you can't even scroll through your feeds while you're trying to get ready. A new podcast from Boise State Public Radio has you covered. I'm George Prentice, and I want to invite you to check out The Connector every weekday morning. You can get up to speed on all of the Idaho news you need to start your day without ever interrupting your morning routine. All you have to do is hit play. That's The Connector from Boise State Public Radio. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Imagine going out for date night and it goes horribly wrong when you find yourself in the middle of a crime in progress. That's the premise of author Colleen Oakley's latest novel, Jane and Dan at the End of the World. We're lucky enough to have Colleen joining us today to talk more. Colleen, really nice to have you on the program.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, so I gave a little tiny bit about the novel, but how would you describe this new book?
Yeah, so it's about a couple who has been, they're in midlife, they're in their mid-40s, and they've been married for going on 19 years. They're going out to celebrate their 19th wedding anniversary. And when they get to dinner, before they can even start their second course, an entire terrorist group, underground eco-terrorist group, bursts into the restaurant and takes everybody hostage. And the kind of tagline that I've been spinning it as is, if Jane and Dan can survive this, perhaps they can survive anything, even marriage.
Okay. Now, part of this is that as they are being held hostage, she's a writer. I mean, not necessarily successful, but she's a writer. And she starts to realize, wait a minute, this is a plot out of one of my books.
Yes. So this might be ripped a bit from my own life.
Okay.
In that, writing, being an author is a hard industry. It's very fun and very rewarding, but it's tough. It's a roller coaster industry, being in publishing. And, I was coming off of a few not unsuccessful books, but certainly not as successful as I had hoped to be in my career yet. And so I was thinking, as I was creating Jane's character, wouldn't it be so funny if she was a failed author and she felt like nobody had read her books? And when she's in this hostage situation, she starts to think that maybe there is one person who's read her book, and it happens to be the terrorist that's holding her hostage. And he maybe is following her crime thriller novel beat by beat to perpetuate his own crime.
Well, but she also assumes that her husband doesn't read her books. But
yes.
Kind of comes out that, Dan also was like, "Hey, isn't this one of your books?"
Yeah, she is not quite sure if her husband has even taken an interest in her career, and it comes to her as a bit of relief to know that he actually has.
Yeah. Well, and so this book actually really struck me because I've been married for 18 years. Our next anniversary will be 19. We have two teenagers, and when you write about how Jane just doesn't almost feel needed anymore, right? And yeah. I definitely kind of feel that way in some ways, right? Where, especially when I look at our oldest, who is 16, a junior in high school, they need you, but not in the way that they did when they were little. And you're also, getting them to launch as well, right? And I really felt that struggle that Jane is going through.
Yeah, obviously this is a satirical kind of comedy thriller is what I call it. But at its heart, it really is me exploring what I'm going through in life right now. I'm in my mid-40s. I've been married for almost 2 decades, and I have 4 children who are all becoming quite independent, and one is almost ready to leave the nest. And that is a very interesting and challenging place to be as a mother.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of Jane's interiority is certainly things that I've been thinking myself over the past few years.
Well, and I think that that was what struck me as I've really been thinking about a lot of this as well, having a kiddo that's a year, a year and a half away from going off to college. And I'm trying to live in the moment, but it's really difficult to live in the moment because all I think about is, oh my God, he's going to leave and I'm going to
Mhm.
fall apart, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And
And
I think, it's something that I don't know that we talk about enough in society because there is something about when your kids leave the nest, it's supposed to be this very happy kind of you did it moment, right? Like you've brought them to this point of almost adulthood. But I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of grief and sadness that goes along with it too. And that's certainly something Jane is trying to grapple with and cope with throughout this novel.
Oh, well, I think, what I see her grappling with is exactly that, right? And you're right that we don't talk about this enough in the sense that, yes, there is this sense of relief when we get them to this stage, but at the same time, at least for me, I'm like, I like this kid now. Like, I mean, he's great. I mean, and all the work is paying off. And now you're gonna leave after literally all the blood, sweat, and tears and my entire being poured into you. And now we have to let them go. I just find that horribly unfair. And I just do not like how the universe does this.
Exactly. I'm the same. And I also think, there's so much to be explored as far as like who you are then. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've worn this hat of being a mother and being so needed for all of these years. And it's not that you're not a mother anymore, but they certainly need you a lot less. And what is your role now? And what does the rest of your life look like when you're not doing the day-to-day mothering things that
Mm-hmm.
you're used to?
Well, and I think too, what seems to happen is you really see just within our society as kids launch, as they leave the nest, the parents are all of a sudden like, oh, well, okay, who are we, right? And who are we
Yes.
as a couple? And do we belong together anymore? And and I think women really struggle with that a lot because, as you said, we pour so much of ourselves into raising these children and even with Jane and Dan, right? I mean, Jane's like, well, we're going out on date night. This would be a good time to like tell him maybe we should get divorced, right?
Right.
And
Exactly. She's not quite sure who she is anymore. She's not quite sure if their relationship is right for her anymore. Yeah, she's definitely struggling with what it all means for her and her life going forward.
Mhm. And I have to tell you that once again, I think you've done such a great job with taking serious subject matter, but making it really fun. Um, I loved your book, The Mostly True Story of Tanner and Louise. Like I loved it, like laugh out loud. I loved it. And I feel that way about this book as well. How do you do that? I mean, because this is deep subject matter, right? I mean, kids
Yeah.
leaving, you're looking at your marriage, you're in midlife, right? It's all of these things that so many of us struggle with, but you really do bring a lightness to it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I do work hard to do that. I think at its heart, reading, especially, in times that we're experiencing now that can be so difficult
Hmm.
in our culture and our society, reading should be an escapism and fun. But I also still want to explore kind of these deeper emotional things that I'm going through that I know certainly my friends also face in their mid 40s. And so I just want to strike a nice balance where you can really still enjoy the book and kind of laugh your way through it, but also relate to it on a deeper emotional level. And I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me.
Well, I mean, I really, really do just appreciate that. And because, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like, I have to read enough heavy stuff. It's nice to pick up a book that
Yeah.
definitely isn't just fluff, right? But that is engaging on that level.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, who is your favorite character to write in this book?
Oh gosh. I don't want to give too much away, but I
Okay.
think I'll just say Jane, simply because I related to her so much. I mean, my husband is reading it now. I don't let him read my books until after they're
Oh, I love that.
done. And all he can say is, yes, honey, I loved it.
Ah.
But he's
Okay,
reading it now and he's like, oh, you really put a lot of yourself in this book, I see.
that's funny. Well, how much is he like Dan?
A little bit for sure. I mean, definitely some of the banter back and forth in their marriage.
Yeah.
He is seeing similarities.
I appreciated that too, though, that banter, right? Because I I sometimes think, especially with rom-com, whether it's a movie or a show or a book, it's that kind of like beginning of love, right? When you're falling in
Right.
love and the sparks and all of that. And I think that we have this tendency in our society to think that that's what love is supposed to be. Like that's how it's supposed to always look like. And I
Yes.
always joke with my friends, I'm like, you know what they need? You need a book that's like 20 years in, right? Let's really tell you what this looks like. And again, I think you did a really great job with that. And I mean, so was that part of it too, was wanting to maybe show what a marriage, what a family looks like 2 decades in?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, exactly what you said. I love romances, but most of them are about the beginning. And I think there is so much more to a marriage, particularly 20 years in, and so much that
Mm-hmm.
you go through, and so much strife and hard times. And it doesn't mean you don't love your family and love your husband and love the life you've created, but there are certainly struggles and downsides to it. And I just wanted to be really authentic to that relationship.
Well, and I think you did that though, because I mean, that's exactly it, right? Where it's like, I am so thankful for my life and all of that. But man, there are days where you're just shaking your head, right? And not
Yes.
not like you'd ever walk away from it, but I really think we need to do a better job, not just talking, as we said, about, kids leaving, but really what marriage looks like. I mean, healthy marriage, right? What healthy
Yes.
relationships look like 10, 20 years in, and not just those beginning stages of a relationship.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Colleen. It has been such a pleasure talking with you. And I have to say, I just another great book. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudet.
If you like podcasts like this, explore more from the Boise State Public Radio podcast family. There you'll find a mix of daily news, Idaho voices, and in-depth series on a wide range of topics. I'm talking wild horses, political scandals, sustainable ranching, and militia groups in a post-January 6th world. Wherever you get your podcasts, just search Boise State Public Radio to find what Idaho's NPR station has in store for you.